derailments, track fires, and other incidents that delayed and disheartened people, mostly on the subways now we're talking. Okay. That's not good. I'm happy to announce that near the end of this year's session of the New York State Senate in June, Randy Glucksman was finally confirmed by the full Senate as Metro-North Commuter Council's non-voting representative on the MTA board. Randy was recommended for the post by the council and replaces Neil Zuckerman, who is now representing Putnam County on the board and is a voting member. Carl Weisbrod, a mayor's nominee and former chair of the New York City Planning Commission, filled the last of the city's seats on the board. Scott Reckler, the CEO of RXR Realty and Regional Plan Association board chair and former vice chair of the Port Authority, that's enough titles, was chosen by the governor to serve on the board. In addition, the Senate confirmed new terms for 4 current board members, including myself. Of course, several days later, in the waning hours of the legislative session, the Senate confirmed Joe Lhota as the new chairman of the MTA. Mr. Lhota, who is our guest today, returned to the chairmanship after serving in the position for slightly more than a year in 2011 and 2012 before resigning to run for mayor of New York. This time, however, he will not be a full-time chairman, as he will be retaining his full-time position with NYU Langone Medical, and relying on an executive team to handle the day-to-day MTA matters. I've had a number of conversations with Chair Lhota in my capacity as a board member that, along with his active press and public engagement and actions during the Penn Station construction, show him to be ready to take on the challenges that face the MTA and its agencies, and we really hope he does. Yeah.
Didn't he take a leave initially? That was my understanding, and that's what I was told from his position from his
NYU?
Position at NYU. Yeah. No? Maybe we can ask him that.
He's been here an
today.
Awful lot, but
No,
I know that he still goes back and forth.
Okay, I don't know. That was my understanding, and that's what I was told. So we can ask him.
Yep. The executive team that Mr. Lhota has assembled in a newly created office of the chairman includes several familiar faces. Pat Foy, who was an MTA board member between 2010 and 2012, and most recently served as executive director of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, was appointed president of the MTA. That's a new title, by the way. Ronnie Hakem, who had moved from her post as president of New York City Transit to serve as interim executive director of the MTA following the departure of Tom Prendergast earlier this year, has been named managing director of the MTA. She's actually the second managing director that the MTA has had. Diana Jones-Ritter was a managing director when she was here. She came from the New York State Department of Mental Health. Yes. Jano Lieber, who oversaw the rebuilding of the World Trade Center properties with Silverstein Properties and was a panelist on an event we co-sponsored with the Urban Land Institute to promote approval of a robust MTA capital program, rounds out the executive team within this office of the chairman that was created. He's now the Chief Development Officer. Chairman Lhota and these 3 individuals face major challenges in addressing the condition and performance of the MTA system. The problems in the subway led Mr. Lhota to release an $836, I guess that should be $million action plan to address the stunning decline in performance in the subways over the past several years. And those of us that ride regularly, you can see things starting maybe a year ago starting to fail as a result of not proper attention. And of course, even if you do fix some of these things, it takes quite a bit of time to notice a change. And I guess the chair will describe, how often now tracks and switches are inspected and signals and all of that. A longer range plan for subway improvements continues to be developed as the MTA evaluates submissions for the Genius Challenge, and I'm sure we'll hear a little bit about that today. The Genius Transit Challenge, as you may have learned from many reports this summer, is a competition for individuals and firms to submit new ideas aimed at improving signals, rolling stock, and communications in the subway. A $1 million prize will be provided for the submission in each of these areas that is judged to have the greatest merit. The competition opened on July 11, and the window for submissions closed a month later. MTA officials and a panel of expert judges are now moving to the second phase of the selection process, where a subset of proposals will be reviewed in greater detail. A big thank you to Owen Costello, who represented the Port Washington branch on the Long Island Railroad Commuter Council for 8 years. Owen resigned from the council earlier this summer, and we thank him for his service to riders. Our MTA board members Randy Glucksman and Ira Greenberg and Bill Henderson attended a press briefing with Governor Cuomo at the new Moynihan Train Hall in August. There wasn't much new information presented in this session, but seeing the structure and the progress that is being made there was very informative. And I believe if you read the Long Island Railroad Chair's report in your materials, you'll see more information about the Moynihan Hall. Let's see. That project is a $1.6 billion public-private partnership that is being developed by a consortium of the related companies, Vornado Realty, and Skanska USA. This team has contributed $630 million towards the construction of this project, and in exchange will have a 99-year lease on the Farley building. The remainder of the funding is being provided by the State of New York, Amtrak, the MTA, and the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. Completion of the new train hall is projected for 2020. Finally, over the summer... I guess we're trying to reach Edith. Is that what this is about? I assume that's what it is. Oh, finally, over the summer, an amendment to the MTA Capital Program was approved by the Capital Program Review Board. The amendment will increase authorized work in the 2015-2019 plan by $3 billion to bring the total size of the program to $32 billion. While this is the largest program ever in dollar terms, there is still much to be done, including funding for the completion of Phase 2 of 2nd Avenue. As we are now past the halfway point of the current program, it is time to start thinking about the 2020 to 2024 MTA Capital Program. While the PCAC may not have to expend the level of effort it did in advocating for approval of the current program, it is certainly important for us to ensure that the spending included in the next program addresses the issues critical to the operation of the entire MTA system. We must also insist that the 2020 to 2024 program is funded in a responsible manner that does not create pressure to raise fares or cut service, as the system must remain affordable for riders. I think we're almost ready. For those that have had a chance to review the emailed chair's reports of the 3 councils that were sent to you, does anybody have any questions on any of those? All right, yeah. Do we have a quorum?
We do.
We have a quorum, so can we get an approval of today's agenda? Great, terrific. How about the minutes that you received? Any corrections, additions, or can we have an approval of those? Second? All right, terrific. Oh, okay. We're going to shift seats, apparently.
Step out.
So, as you can see, Chairman Loda has brought some folks with him. Some of them are familiar to many of us. We are very delighted that the chair, who, as you heard, is shuttling between the MTA and NYU, has found the time to be with us. We hope we can give you a lot of great feedback. So welcome, Chairman Loda.
figure out how to work this. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Bill, and everyone from the PCAC. And no problem ever coming to meet with you. I'm not sure I can do it monthly, but I will do it whenever. And I'm always available by email or various other ways to get to me. I would like to just make a very short presentation. I received from Bill some questions. I'm sure you all have questions. I think the best thing for me to do is to spend as much time answering your questions as possible, because I think it also will engender a conversation overall. But let me just broadly talk about a couple of different things. Obviously, the subway plan that was described back in about 35, 40 days ago, can talk about what's been going on with the plan and what we're working on. We had some charts, maybe impossible to see, but some of the charts that were used. Let me start off with the round circle, because this was something that I put together on a piece of paper and then was able to get someone to use PowerPoint and make it nice looking. Look, everything starts with, and in this case, for those of you here from the Long Island Railroad, you can strike the word subway and just put Long Island Railroad on top of customer. So everything that we do, that I want to do while I'm here, is going to focus on the customer. What can we do to make their life different? We've got to improve the reliability. We've got to improve our capacity issues, both on the platform and on the trains. We want to enhance the stations and safety at the stations. And the most important thing we started, and I'll say it actually started before I came, but it's important to be involved in making some of the changes, and that is changing the way we communicate with our customers, regardless if it's on the railroads or on the subway. And the perfect example in the communication is, I really, as a rider myself, I can't tell you how infuriated I would be when I was stuck in the subway and I was told it was stuck because of train traffic. I still don't know what that means. Or being told that we're being stopped because of police action. My concept of a police action is a scary concept, so I don't like to, the words just didn't mean anything to me. So we did have a situation where, as you know, we had a situation up on the east side, 4, 5, and 6 train, where we had someone jump onto the track, and while they were not hit by the train stopped before they got there. Unfortunately, they hit the third rail, and while they were still alive at that time, we had a train coming into the 86th Street station, and we had 2 trains that were in the tunnel already, and we couldn't move around them, so we had to stop. I can give you the specifics. The specifics. The actual shutdown of the third rail and the jump happened at 6:37 in the evening, so we're right in the middle of the rush hour, worst possible time for the rush hour. Communication took over, and it started from the RCC, where the RCC informed everyone, excuse me, that we had an unauthorized person on the track, and until, we need to get them off the track. We then went on to say that an ambulance has been called a few minutes later, and then a few minutes later the ambulance has arrived, and that the unauthorized person on the track has been taken off by the ambulance service, and then finally we're waiting clearance and we'll put the power back on. So that happened, and then by 7, I think the number was 7:24, so in less than an hour. But believe me, that hour seems like a lot long period of time. We had a situation, just so you know, what we didn't tell our customers is that the person had jumped so far, they hit the wall, and then coming back, they hit the third rail. They were running away from, there was not a suicide situation, they were running away from a police officer. So in any event, none of that, I can give you that information. It's not necessarily needed for the communications. But what's important is that instead of just saying for 40 minutes, it's a police action, it's a police action. No, tell them actually what's happening. And the best part of it was seeing the tweets that came out from people who were stuck in the system, how pleased they were with getting those types of messages. And I think of tweeting as both a blessing and a curse. But now that we have Wi-Fi in the system, we give opportunities for everybody not only to tell us what they think, and by the way, I don't think anybody ever says anything nice on Twitter, but they'll tell us what they think, and they'll also take pictures and send them send them out, not just us, but to the world, and we appreciate that. So that's just one small way in which we're changing communications. When it comes to the overall plan, I'm just going to run through a list of things that were started. You can ask me specifics, but I want to respect something, and I hope both Randy and Andrew understand this. I've not said this to either of them before or to any of the other board members. Since I've been here, I've done a lot of things, and I've talked to the public before I've talked to the board. And I think I need to be a little bit more respectful of the board. So we will be at the next board meeting going through very specifics as to what we've been doing with numbers and actual actions for the subway action plan. Also, when it comes to new metrics, which I'll talk about, we'll be disclosing them to the board, and at the same time, we're disclosing them to the public. But I think, you know, and I mean this heartfelt, that, you know, it is very important that the board be informed about this before we go public with it. But the reality is, once I talk to the board, I am talking to the public. So but the first step is to do that. Look, so in the areas that we have focused on overall, we know that 54% of our problems when it comes to delays are signals, track, and power. We have specific issues that are going on there. The remainder of it, while very important, is that if I have, in a limited period of time, what can I do to change the delay situation as much as possible? And quite honestly, there are some things that we can do. None of it's easy, but they're all easy to think about in doing. There's work that we need to do on power. We're working with the Public Service Commission and with Con Edison about power issues. And these aren't about third rail power issues. These are about the power issues that go to the signals. Anytime that we have any kind of a voltage problem, up or down, it'll trip the signals to go off. Not a good situation. So we need to get a regular stream. And we're working with Con Ed, and Con Ed's working with their oversight, the Public Service Commission, to get a better system in place for that. And also to deal with, in addition to the power issues that we have, but also deal with water. Water, and that number up there represents, they said, 4% of the problems. And I think that's because we're not sure exactly what it's doing, because water has an impact on power, it has an impact on signals, it has an impact on tracks, and quite honestly, part of the problem, as you all know, probably know already, on a clear, sunny day, we take 13 million gallons of water out of the system. We're not unique. It happens in London, it happens in Paris, it happens even in the metro in Washington, which was built in the late 70s, early 80s. For those of you who want, you go back and look at the old maps of New York during the Revolutionary period, and Manhattan in particular is full of rivers and streams and brooks all over the place. Believe me, they're still there. They're just underneath some big tall building right next to our system. And the concrete that was used when the subways were built, going back 100 to 50 to 100, actually 60 to 100 years ago, the concrete that was used then is not the same as the concrete that we would use today, and it's poured differently, and it's not lined. Now today, when we with the work that we had to do down here in Lower Manhattan, there's a liner that's put in place, then the concrete, then a liner, then more concrete to prevent water leakage. Well, that wasn't thought about, when the system was developed. So we do have the water. What I learned 5 years ago is that when we had the water problems related to Sandy, we were able to get as much of the water out as quickly as possible to get the system up and running because we had the equipment already. So on that side of it. But the water, and one of the problems with the water and the ponding that happens is the trash. A lot of people think, and a lot of reporters talk about trash, and they immediately go to sing and the impact it can have on fires. That's true. It can cause fires. But it does something more frequently. Trash can fill up in the catch basins, and when the catch basins get filled up, the water starts ponding, and trains are going through puddles, larger puddles. That has an impact of spraying the water onto some of the signals, onto the cars, onto the brakes. And we've started a program to begin the process of trying to eliminate as much trash in the system as possible. New vacuums, new approaches going around, as well as a new advertising campaign which has started some on some of our kiosks. Some advertising has actually started today that's being paid for elsewhere, not by the MTA, but by a friend of the MTA, so that it's important for people to understand throwing the garbage down. Now, many people have asked me, why are we only buying 2 of these and 2 of these? We are testing out different approaches. The last system we had, believe it or not, it can pick up newspapers and it can pick up, cups that may come from a diner that have coffee in it. But what it won't pick up, and it could pick up an empty plastic bottle, but it won't pick up a Snapple bottle. And Snapple bottles are not bottles that have a 5-cent deposit return on it. Throw it on the track. Why people do it, I have no idea. But they do it, and it's our job to clean it up, and we'd love to be able to get people not to do it. And so there's a whole campaign going there. So on tracks, we've launched an emergency water campaign initiative. We're accelerating our track cleaning. We're accelerating our track repair program. We've tripled the rate of installation of our continuous welded rail. We were a month ago at 50% done. We've increased that so we can get more welded rail overall and approach. And we've also put together these, what we call CAT teams, or the combined action teams in place, being able to, that when we have a situation, people are pre-positioned in different places. Now, I have maps back in my office where we're able to look at where are the problem areas for water, where are the problem areas for signal, where are the problem areas for track, and overlay them. And quite honestly, you're starting to see some consistency. So it allows us to know where to pre-position people. And when I say that we're talking on tracks, we're talking on signals, we're also doing it on a combined basis. Generally, we would go in and we'd do all signals, or we'd go in and we'd do all track. Now we're trying to do it, if we're going to have a shutdown during the night, we're going to try to do as much as possible in that area to deal with all of those problems. So it's a change in culture. We're working with the Transit Workers Union on that. It's a change in our overall approach, but I think it's the right way to look at it. Let me stop for a second. I can talk more about power. I can talk about cars. I can talk about stations and cleaning and all of the things that we're going there. I've talked about communications. I never talked about, and I should have up front, why? Why the problems now? What happened this spring? What was unique about this spring? As somebody who's been a rider, the spring anomaly, I think, this has been building for a period of time. And if you go back diagnostically and look at what happened, when we had a fiscal crisis due to the mortgage market decline in 2009 and 2010, some people call it the Great Recession, there was a 20% drop in revenues to the MTA. There was a 20% drop in revenues to the city in their revenues and to the state in their revenues. So it was consistent across the board. Actions had to be taken. You at the PCAC will remember this clearly. There were reductions in service, both on the subways and a lot on buses. There was a reduction in headcount, and as well it was an extension of the intervals on maintenance. I remember this because in 2012 when I was last here, we put it back a lot of service, and everybody thought it was a great thing, as I did. And it wasn't, not all service was put back. A lot was put back. A lot was put back differently because demographics had changed, and a lot's still being put back, and it's being expanded due to demographics. But headcount never changed. If you saw our headcount chart, you saw this drop, and then it evened off, and it's been pretty level all the way through to now. And with that said, same things happen with maintenance. I can talk generically about maintenance. We can get specifically about maintenance. But there are so many things in the system that need to be maintained. But generally, if it was something that we had been maintaining on every 90 days or every 3 months, it got extended to every 5 or 6 months. And if it was looked at on a weekly basis, it was now looked at on 10 days to a 2-week basis. It took a while, but it caught up. And that lack of maintenance, which we need to change, which is as part of the subway plan, is to increase headcount again. It's not increase headcount for increase sake. Strategically, we have to change how we do our maintenance. We used to do maintenance, it was done, maintenance on a car was done every 3,000 miles, whether it was a new car or an old car. Looking at the airline industry of how they do maintenance on their existing fleets, and they're a good example to look at. It's a much more dynamic system. They do put their jets, take their jets off online, but they change everything in a methodical way. We need to look at it that way. It can't be, we're all going to do signals. We're all going to do, in train. We got to do it in total in a more holistic approach. So there are a couple of questions that I'll address slightly that were asked. There was a question that was asked about the Genius Awards. So we have received, if there's a reporter in the room, this is going to be information. We've received 436, 37 proposals that have come in. They're being evaluated. Right now, I would say close to 20% of them, or 80, are viable things for us to consider, considerably more than I thought. We're being evaluated. There are people are coming back with more written proposals so we get further understanding. But I do think that when you look at what's come in on the Genius approach, both on the signaling side, on the rail, on the car side, and on various other aspects of the areas that were looked at, I'm pleasantly surprised. I'm pleasantly pleased with what is going on and what's there. We need to go through it in more detail. They just came in the last 10 days, so we're going through. But I will tell you, I do think that there are some things that will come from that approach overall. We also have our own folks, the folks who developed the beacon system for the countdown clocks on the B line, have also are working on their own on a potential wireless approach. I'm more optimistic than anybody else in this building on a wireless approach to signals. I will tell you that. Everybody else is a little bit, they're more, not pessimistic, but they're more cautious. Maybe I hope my hopes are not dashed, but I do think that there are ways, and there are some innovative ways to look at it. So the same team that we had who developed the situation with Beacon are looking at that right now. And so we've got our own teams looking at, our own geniuses here looking at information. The Office of the Chairman, do we have the ability to pop that up on the screen? Question was asked about structure. I'm sorry, I don't know how readable that is to all of you, but I will talk about the structure because the questions were, what does Ronnie do? What does Pat do? What does everyone do? So I created an Office of the Chairman. As was referenced by Andrew Albert when I was introduced, I am not here full-time, but I try to be here as much as possible. And in this day and age of cell phones and emails and text messaging, if you really want me, text me, because that's the best way to get me. But I told the governor that I wanted to put together a team of people. It needed to be an office of a chairman. I believe this job, first off, it is a gigantic organization. We work with 8 to 9 million customers on a daily basis through all of our operating subsidiaries. So we've got Ronnie Hakem as the managing director. You all know she was the president of New York City Transit. I forgot to introduce you guys. I'll do that momentarily. Sorry. I got right into it. Ronnie is going to make sure, I hate to say it this way, but I will, she's going to make sure the trains run on time. The responsibility of the presidents of the operating agencies report into Ronnie, as well as the MTA police, as well as labor-related issues. Pat Foy is here from a point of view of what can we do and how do we get the MTA into the 21st century? What are all of the new ideas? What things can we harness? Including what legislative changes do we need in Albany that are preventing us from doing things because the legislature, for lots of reasons, has not kept up with the technology of the world, and we may need to do new and different things, new fare payments, trying to deal with the capacity issues, wireless strategies. Ronnie and Pat have to work together on a team because they're going to intersect with each other. It becomes a matrix organization. Ronnie's got the nuts and bolts. The way to think about it, Ronnie's got the nuts and bolts day to day. Pat's got the what can we do to get to tomorrow as fast as possible. Jano Lieber is the president of MTA Capital Construction and chief development officer. He too will work closely with Pat and with Ronnie. It's to try to coordinate our efforts on real estate. I have always thought, as an example, we should have been real estate investors on the 2nd Avenue subway when we knew it really was going to get done. To watch the real estate industry make money off of the work that all of us have done to get the 2nd Avenue subway run, it rubs me the wrong way. And of course, we need to find a way to think about it. As we extend the 2nd Avenue subway up to 125th Street and then down south, what are we going to do? And actually, in thinking about it, I really don't like Monday morning quarterbacking, but do we really need to have the exhaust and the entranceways on the corners? The corners are the most valuable pieces of property. Couldn't we put them in the middle of the street? We bought them. Could we put a building on top of it? Could we put an apartments on top and then sell them? There are got to be, you know, when the railroads first started, Cornelius Vanderbilt did not get rich because he owned a railroad. Cornelius Vanderbilt got rich because he bought all the property around the railroad. And so we got to look at that as an example of what we need to do as we extend on the Second Avenue subway. Those are things that Jano is going to focus on. He comes to us from Silverstein Properties. He was actively involved in the redevelopment of everything that's gone on down at the World Trade Center. He was president of the World Trade Center Properties. He and Pat, I think, will make a great team in getting ideas together. And quite honestly, as I told both of them at a staff meeting this morning, you know, I don't expect 100% of their ideas to be successful, but I think if 2 or 3 out of 10 are successful, we are going to be in a much, much better place. Underneath, you know, I have Bob Ferran, the Chief Financial Officer, Helene Fromm, the General Counsel, Communications, Chief Safety Officer, Counselor to the reporting to me, Chief of Staff overall. So there's most of it, but it's being worked on a team basis. I'll go back and I'll say it again. I think it's the pyramidal structure of how this place operates is not what's needed to operate. Because, you know, those of you who've been around here a long time know the independence of these silos talking to each other. We need to find a way not to break down the silo, but to have it matrixed and to have better communication. We're going to spend a lot of time on doing that. I talked about the subway plan. The other question from Bill was, Amtrak repair work. What did we learn? We learned a lot. First off, don't ever call it a summer. Never mind. I'm not going to finish that. But it laid the background for the problem, and it laid the background for, oh my God, we are being told by Amtrak that 20% of the trains that were coming into Penn Station during the rush hour period could not come in. And what could we do and to change it? And of course, I mean, for the first time ever, we went overboard. But for a good reason, because we wanted to try it out. What we were basically asking Long Islanders who commute in on the railroad, or people from Manhattan who commute out to Long Island, for which that is a growing part of their service, we were asking them to change their habits. We can ask them to come in a little bit earlier. We can ask them to come in a little bit later. When I mentioned that, it became ridiculed throughout Twitter by saying, I know nothing about how the real world works. Nobody can go to work earlier. It's like, okay. But nonetheless, what we did see was a change in habits. And actually, we're seeing some of the people who left earlier continuing to leave earlier to come into the cities, which is a good thing. We offered an incentive for more people to go from Jamaica, get to Jamaica and go to downtown Brooklyn. And then if they work south of Penn Station, instead of getting on the 2 and the 3 south, get on the 2 and the 3 or the 4 and the 5 or any of the other 4 lines that we have underneath Barclays Center to come into Manhattan. And a lot of people realized that it's faster to get to where they needed to go, so they did change. Ferry service, we started both for having people come across from Long Island City as well as from Glen Cove. We told everybody right from the start we were not going to continue the ferry service. It would end at the end of the summer. So the city of Glen Cove is looking at it now. They want to take over what happened there, and we think that's a great thing. And there were 50 to 60 people every morning. Oh, more than that, actually. On the first one, the one that left at 6:30 in the morning, had 50 to 60 people on it every morning consistently all the way through. And going on down to Midtown and then to 34th Street and then to Wall Street. And we had a lot of buses. I grew up in Long Island. I could never understand why anybody would want to get on a bus and get on the Long Island Expressway to come into Manhattan. And so after 10 days, we realized that the number of people who were on the buses were dwindling and not existent, so we started to do away with that service. But we learned. But we also had a couple of situations where we had some problems on the system, and we were able to use the buses and reroute them within minutes. Because one of the things we learned from this summer was creating what we called a war room or a command center. I can't tell you how many 6 o'clock and 6:30 calls every morning to be able to, listen to the Long Island Railroad, get their report, the subways and get their report. We've continued that after the summer. These reports early in the morning help because we can help with making decisions. We help with making rerouting. How often do we hear about, there is a problem, people have to get off the railroad, in the Long Island Railroad, at least in Jamaica, or Metro North on 125th Street, and then they've got to get on the subways to come down. Being able to coordinate that as quickly as possible to be able to honor, being able to cross-honor the Metro North, the Long Island Railroad pass on to the subways, really goes a long way in doing that. There's better enhanced communication now with the police department, NYPD. We know when we had the fire situation up at 145th Street and everybody moved from one train line to another train line, all of a sudden the police stayed where the fire was. They didn't help move to the new location where we all saw pictures the next day on the front page of the Daily News or the Post of how crowded it was. Well, we needed to have more police there to help in getting people into the system. So we learned from that, and what we learned from that is we need to know what's going on, and we need to communicate better, and we need to communicate better internally. So what did we learn this summer? We learned that Amtrak can keep to their schedule, which we're very happy about, but we also learned a lot of how we can operate ourselves and operate directly. And the last question that was given to me was about Metro North, and regarding the Metro North president, can we get an update on the process? The process has been ongoing. We have 6, possibly 7 candidates that are coming back. The initial first interviews started yesterday for one of the candidates, so that we are well along in that process, and we hope to be able to work with the Metro North Committee of the MTA Board and move forward as expeditiously as possible. We have, I think we have very viable candidates and a real good opportunity to be able to get someone quickly. And what I'm more pleased with, and we're seeing this through the executive recruiting firm that we use, but there's a lot of people who want to come here and help us run the place, which I think is also indicative of, which is a very good thing. With that, let me do what I was supposed to do at the very beginning. Those of you, many of you know already, introduce everybody who's sitting up here with me. This is Darrell Irick. Darrell Irick is the acting president of New York City Transit. We have Naomi Rennick. Naomi Rennick is the chief of staff to New York City Transit. Peter Caffiero, who is chief of operations and planning, and the guy I rely on a lot. I see your wife back there. She doesn't want to know it's you. So but in any event, Peter, I'll tell you one story about Peter. Sandy happened. I don't know, Peter, if you remember this. Sandy happened, and we had a problem. All the tubes from Brooklyn over were full of water, and as they were full of water, Peter was doodling, well, more than doodling, on a yellow pad and trying to develop, and he had a thing called a top-cold bus bridge, and he was able to instantaneously, very quickly, say, look, we can get out, every train in Brooklyn all of them but one, the F line, will stop at Barclays. F would stop at J Street, the old Transit Authority headquarters. We can use our buses and get everybody to get off the subways, get onto the buses, be able to then get them into the city, some of which would go over the Manhattan Bridge, some would go over I think the Williamsburg Bridge at the time. Biggest problem I had, because it was a great idea and it worked, was trying to convince the city to give us an HOV lane, which they did not do the first day until the mayor saw the problem and wanted to know why we didn't ask Jeanette Sada-Khan to do it. And I said, you should talk to your commissioner, because I've been pleading with her to give us that dedicated lane, and we did have it the next day. And Peter developed a plan to get people in from Brooklyn into Manhattan when the rest of the subway system was up and running in the most efficient and simplest way possible. So I rely on Peter all the time for those efficient and magical ideas that he comes up with. And I think the newspaper the other day called him the wizard of, I think that's the term they use. So I think it's a good term. With that, let me stop talking and I get an opportunity to ask any questions.
We're going to take, as many questions
Okay.
as we can. Joe, I just want to thank you and your team for everything that you're doing and will do to set the system right. Randy and I and Ira know Joe for a long time, and we know if anybody can do it, Joe can do it. As far as this summer, I think, I won't call it overbuilding, but I would call it the redundance of the subway and commuter rail system that we have helped a great deal. Things are easily rerouted, you know, when the Rutgers tube is doing work, you can reroute through the Cranberry tube. When the Clark Street is being done, you can reroute through the Joralemon tube. Long Island Railroad has Brooklyn, Long Island City, Hunters Point, all of these, and I think we're so much better off because of that. All right.
So,
Yeah.
Andrew, let me just address that as you decide the questions. But I think that what I said up front and what concerned me as we went into the summer is we were asking commuters to change their habits. And what you just described, because I know you know so much about the system and going from point A to point B and the multiple ways to get around doing it, you're asking people to change their habits. You know, they go to one station, they always go to the same station. It's what they want to do. But part of this that we learned is that you know, if with the proper communication, with the proper advertising, with the proper working with the press to get the right type of articles about what's available, New Yorkers will change their habits. Not all of them, but enough of them to make a difference. So the system is robust.
Appreciate
enough
that.
to do that.
And it's true. Mark?
Hi, thank you for coming. I'm Chair of the Long Island Railroad Commuter Council. I want to follow up on the question, which was mine, about the lessons learned. We know we're going to go through this again when the tunnels get closed for Sandy, and you discussed service issues. There were also some mundane procedural hiccups that riders faced. I'm asking, is there going to be a real lessons learned report done? If so, we would ask, since we were not asked to be involved before the summer in giving suggestions on behalf of riders, that we be asked that we be part of it afterwards, so we can give you some day-to-day issues that we saw that riders were facing. Because as you just mentioned, you worked with the press, and no way was there in working with the commuter councils on these issues beforehand. So that's my general question: is will there be a document made, and will the riders' representatives be involved in it?
So, in all honesty, now that you've asked the question, I think I'm going to have to put together a lessons learned report, because I don't believe, I did not request one, but I will check with the Long Island Railroad. Hopefully they have and are prepared to do it, and I'll also check with Ronnie, Ronnie is at the opening of a new subway, a new enhanced subway station, I think 59th Street, 53rd out in Brooklyn, right now, and so I will find out. But I think you're right. You're absolutely right. Everything I've ever been taught in my life is you always do an after-action report, and that's the lessons learned report. So yes, we should do that.
And Mark brings up a good point, which is, we're a resource that you should definitely tap.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Trudy?
Joe, I first of all want to thank you as somebody who once handled communications for the MTA, that being number one on your list is absolutely wonderful. So thank you. There is another kind of communications which I hope you would focus on also, and that is the interagency communications and communications with city agencies. Darrell has heard me speak about this before. Whenever, and it happened as early as 3 weeks ago, one of my first times that I was allowed to go back on the subway, where when there is an incident or a delay or something on the subway, which makes people have to take buses, that you go out, and I'm speaking specifically at my station, which is 77th and Lex, the 77th Street station, and there is a bus stop right there. Mm-hmm. It has happened over and over and over again that the bus drivers have not heard why all of a sudden these crowds are at their bus stop, which usually doesn't have it. And then when people say, I just got off the train, and they just, and it's not their fault. And of course, the riding public, the customers get angry at the bus drivers because they don't know. And then when there have been some incidents which were really where the police then wind up showing up, and they don't know what's going on because nobody has communicated with them. So while we're having much better communications with the customers, I think that there has to be more interagency and outside agency so that everybody knows what's going on at the same time.
So at the RCC, NYPD is also located there, and the fire department is located there. There are representatives who can help, so it helps with the communication with the city agencies. DOT may need or may not, but most of the scenario you just described is more police-related in the crowd control side of it, but also but in, okay. DOT's not in the RCC, that's all I was saying, so, and then on top of that, being able to have the folks in the RCC communicate with the bus service to be able to communicate to the drivers. And with that, I'll let Darrell.
Yeah, so thank you, Trudy, for that. Let me first acknowledge your point. It's a valid point, and I think I'll harken back to the plan and elements of the plan that the chairman referred to, particularly around communications. There is certainly a large opportunity to improve internal communications at New York City Transit and, the bus system. Clearly, we're actually right now in the midst of building a new bus command center out in East New York. And so we believe that plus new protocols, I certainly, coming from the bus system, understand the need that when there's an issue on the subways, that there has to be clear, quick communications between the two operations, and so that we can better serve our customers. Because clearly, I've seen what you're talking about myself.
And I've nudged you about it.
Yes,
quite
you
often.
have.
And what Trudy brings up would be important if there's a problem on the LIRR and all of a sudden people are flooding the subways in Queens. There has to be this intercommunication, obviously.
Acknowledged.
And one more communication thing, which is while we're doing all of the repair works and everything, you're wonderful about posting the notices in the stations. However, it has happened so many times, and it happened when the F line was taken out 3 weeks ago, and I needed to take the F line to go to Brooklyn. I went all the way down on 63rd Street in that whole long L, and then there was a sign greeting me that the F line was not running. Is there any way of, when we do the repair work, of having it at the entrance on the street or at the turnstiles or something, the notices, not just on the platforms, which has happened over and over again also? And that's part of communications.
Yeah, I agree. They're supposed to be so you don't go all the way down the escalators. But let me ask you a question. Do you ever look, do you have an iPhone?
Yes, and on this particular, because I figured I would take the Q to 63rd Street, and then I was able to get a bus faster on 2nd Avenue, so I went straight down to 63rd Street and 3rd Avenue, which was fine. And not only that, but I also check on, there's a New York One now has, which we should publicize also, by the way, channel 220, which is just transit notices and nothing else. I found it by accident. While I was lying flat on my back, I discovered a lot of things. But we don't publicize it. I've been telling people about it, but it's something we should publicize. So I checked channel 220 before I embarked on because it was the first time I was riding the subway since my accident, and there was nothing about the F line being out of commission on that Saturday.
So all of the information that New York One has, and all of the information that various different websites, all come from us. We provide the data to the world. What we can't control is what data that they put on, because they'll cherry pick. It's not everything. quite honestly, MTA.info, subway time, railroad time are much more accurate
Joe
pieces of
wasn't there either.
information.
You asked me a question. I was going to finish up by telling, I checked everything because I was utilizing the exchange between the Q and the F and everything. And
Okay.
you know how I feel about the Second Avenue subway. I said, wow, this will make a smooth connection. It didn't.
Okay,
So-
Okay,
I think
fair
the
enough. We're good.
point is made. Chris?
How are you, sir?
Chris, how are you?
Good. I have two questions, and it's going to be easy. One is I want to thank you. One thing, as you know, this year we had a minor derailment on that Q train, and I have to say, to use that example, that day was enough teamwork was being done. Shuttle buses, you had Cesare on standby at Kings Highway, and the NYPD. Yes, they had to close parts of Kings Highway, but guess what? At least the buses can get through, the Cesare can get through, and taxis. And that was nice to see that for once. I wish, I understand the A train one was dangerous too, but there was something like in Brooklyn should be like used as an example how to keep communication working on. Thank God we had the northbound queue, but the bottom line is at least
And
you
thank
had
God it was at the end of the line, but close to the end.
close to the end of the
Close
line.
to the end.
But at least there was something that there were communication. Just one error that B trains do not go to Coney Island.
Yes,
B goes
the
to Brighton
signs were-
Beach. But you know what? That's like one state. That's the train station's voice. But the bottom line is the passengers got off. At least it was at accessible station that all customers can get off.
So Chris, let me thank you for those statements, because very rarely when we do something right, as I said before, we can go back and look at all of the Twitters that came out then. There's not one good one there.
Well, some of them actually don't pay attention because I'll be honest with you, 95% of them are on their headphones and they don't even pay attention to the announcements. So
That's true.
And I looked at them like
That's the incident where people were moved from the derailed train to another train.
Correct.
Yeah, that was the
Yeah.
boilerplate of how you want to do that,
Right.
yeah.
But the bottom one was it is at least there were some wheelchairs, and they actually said, you know what, I'm going to take the B train to Kings Highway, and there was other options for them to take a bus or to take the shuttle bus, or if they want to use the accessoride. At least there was options.
Right.
That's where it should be used as an example for any kind of emergency and preparedness. My second main question is, I know we're working on cleaning inside the tunnels. I know there's a lot of dust and everything, but in the outside stations like the Sea Beach, which is being worked on, the Brighton line's being worked on, we're going to be working on stations outside that needs to be painted, clean. And I will mention one station that needs to be clean. I know, Andrew, we mentioned this at the last couple of times. 7th Avenue is the most, in Brooklyn, on the B&Q, is the worst station to pray you don't get a four-legged thing coming onto the platform. And I'm being very nice because I don't know if someone's eating or screamage. Thank you, Chikal. At least I'm second that emotion, that one. But the bottom line is there is a concern of safety there.
Agreed, and it's on our list of stations to be cleaned.
Yeah, and I already, the main question is not just the cleaning, but also fixing, not just 7th Avenue, but also in the near future, fixing Sheepshead Bay. There is some crumpling going around there too, and I hope we do get accessible station.
Crumpling?
I'm trying, advocating.
Okay, fine.
And I'm advocating.
I know what that means.
I'm not,
Yeah.
I'm not a fighter, I'm a peacemaker.
Andrew will tell me. I'm not sure what
I
crumpling
know what he
Okay.
means.
Yes.
Stuart?
Hi, Stuart.
Hi, Mr. Chair. Two of the things that I wanted to talk about, my colleagues brought up, but I just wanted to refine some of the nuances. We have speakers that come before the Writers' Council when we meet, and one of the speakers talked about communication, and just don't want the nuance to be lost, that we're talking about within the different units and divisions, there has to be, within the authority. So booth agents need to know.
Right.
And we did ask the question about who from the bus division sits within the command center for rail operations. But our impression after the discussion was that the speed with which the information got out to the people in the field needed to be improved. And we were impressed by the speaker's commitment to following that through. On the other issue, with station cleaning, the individual who spoke with us said,
He's on the phone?
the individual who spoke with us described the process of how they deploy cleaners and said that they were handicapped by union work rules in that if there were people absent, they couldn't redeploy them to other stations that they had on the schedule. And we never heard back whether they were ever able to overcome those staffing issues. And our impression was that...
We're going to take care of that, don't worry.
We had asked for a cleaning schedule, but we never got that.
Yeah.
Station cleaning seemed to have gone off, so I'm excited to hear that you're focused on the customer experience. So
Agreed.
who can get back to us, that would be great.
Yeah, obviously, I don't have the specificity of that information with me, but, yeah, cleaning of the stations is important. And as part of the cleaning of the stations, and I've actually been out there trying to scrub. I mean, some of them, you can scrub until your arm falls off and it's never going to look new again. So, you know, trying to get it to look like the Second Avenue subway, the new stops, or trying to get it, you know, we have low ceilings in a lot of them, so even bright lights, all it does is blind you. It doesn't make it brighter. But I agree with you. There are things we can do.
Joe, I want to ask a couple of questions while you're here. You gave a fairly lengthy talk earlier about water intrusion.
Yes.
Have you been able to determine how much of that water is coming from third parties, like buildings overhead or sewage lines from those buildings?
Why don't let me find out. I don't know the answer.
Because
to that right now.
those should be fixable as opposed to the things that are coming, you know, through the ground, for instance. And the other thing was, is Jano going to be the person who's in charge of the sponsorship of stations initiative as a means of bringing more money into the system? Would it be Jano in that case?
That's still being developed with the New York City partnership. And, yeah, I think it's a combination of all of us right now because we're trying to get the governance structure put in place right. But it's very possible it could be Jano. It could be any one of the three would fall underneath, but we're all working on it at the same time.
Joe, who can I talk to about this? We once had a program called Adopt a Station,
Right.
which I ran. And ever since I read about it, I don't want to bring you this up now, but I just, if you
This
can
program is
let
not
me
a-
know who I can talk
Right, this
to.
program is not adopted.
No, I know it's not,
Right.
but we went through a lot of the similar
You
things.
know Kathy Wild at the New York
Of
City
course I know
partnership?
Kathy.
Call Kathy.
It's her initiative?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Some of us are just, I mean, we think it's great, and, you know, we think it would be great if you could capture the enhanced real estate value of when
Right.
it like you mentioned, but we wouldn't want a station to lose its identity, for instance,
Agreed.
because of, you know,
Agreed.
the geography is important.
Agreed.
I mean,
Well-
Atlantic Barclays is obvious, that one, but, you know, you wouldn't want to lose
Yeah.
34th Street, for
Yeah, but
instance, and have
Barclays is still-
Macy's Station.
But Barclays is still Atlantic Terminal.
Yes,
It's just like, you know, the 34th Street is not Madison Square
Right.
Garden, maybe Penn Station, but
Right.
sometimes it's, you know, it's not.
and the last thing I want to ask before, there's a couple more over here, is communications is important to you, and you've enunciated that very, very clearly. There were two incidents, one a derailment and one something else, which involved our 46 car equipment, where the backup power, for some reason, did not allow announcements. Is, going forward, are conductors now encouraged or instructed to walk through the cars to tell people what's happening?
Yes.
So we don't have people kicking the windows out, you know,
Yes.
panicking?
Yes, they are absolutely being encouraged to do that, they're being trained to do that. Yes. the
Great.
answer is yes. And in
Randy?
some cases, as you know, going through a car during crowd, it can
It's
be
not easy.
complicated.
Yes.
But yes. And the
Terrific.
supervisors do it.
40 years ago, when I was a motorman, I remember operating the number 2 train. I had the water condition north of 110th Street on Lenox, and then we'd get down to Flatbush Avenue. There was one as well, and that was taken care of. It was part of the capital program back in the years when I worked at CPM. So my observation is that I came into Penn yesterday on track 10, which is the track that Amtrak spent the entire summer working on. And I told this to Andrew when we were down there a few weeks ago. I think the Transit Authority could have got it done in one weekend.
Excuse me, Andrew?
I said that the Transit Authority could have got that whole track 10 done in one weekend, not a whole summer of 8 weeks.
Andrew, it's Edith. Can I ask some questions?
Please go ahead, Edith.
Okay. The day of the derailment on the A train was very frustrating because it seems to be that the contingency plans are particularly bad, including the fact that buses were basically just being shuffled uptown and being emptied out at 145th Street with no transit personnel on the street, no information to people trying to go to the Bronx. The driver said take the M3. Well, if all of these buses are being diverted up to 145, the M3 is not going to be able to accommodate the people who are trying to get to 181, to get to the Bronx buses, to 168 to try to get back into the one train. I personally just wheeled up. I gave up my spot on the bus to someone in a manual chair. But I really felt that this was a total botch-up. And I can't believe that this was the contingency emergency plan. I would just say very quickly, secondly, we have a tremendous problem on the A train in which PA systems come and go. You're sitting in a train, and the PA system works, it works. And you have no idea why you're sitting anywhere. And the conductor won't even open the door and tell people in the contingent car what is happening. This is very frustrating.
So Edith, it's Joe Loda.
Yes.
The derailment that you're talking about literally was the first day I was here. I remember it very, very well because everybody looking at their phones and looking at the messages, the initial reaction was it wasn't a derailment, but it took about 30 seconds later, it was derailment. With that, Ronnie and I were on our way up there. And so I can tell you, everything you just...
went to 125th Street.
Right, and everything that you noted is absolutely right. And for me, it was a teaching moment about what we need to do to have a contingency plan. I never wanted to see a situation like that again. A couple of weeks later, we then had the fire at 145th Street, and then I saw, we had some contingency plans in place that were working fine, but we just didn't communicate to be able to get, the number of people, metering the number of people getting into the system. So as a rider, I see these same problems. We're doing everything we can to acknowledge them, not to look the other way, but to acknowledge them and to change them.
Okay, it's particularly frustrating for wheelchair use.
Yes.
And just to...
Because, we were being told we were being taken to 145th and being left there. Well, it's not an acceptable state.
Edith is raising a question that has come up on several issues today, which is the state of the R46 equipment, and where do we stand with the R211 procurement now? Are we about to go to contract sometime soon? Because we got to replace these cars, and I love conversational seating, but yeah, they don't run in the subway, Carol.
We're in negotiations right now. We will bring it to the board in October. I wanted to know which board meeting we can bring it to. Right.
Mark, and then Bert.
I guess I need to put you on the spot a little bit, and I want to get a really solid answer from your perspective. You keep bringing up about things from the customer's perspective. We call rider's perspective. We don't really love the word customer. The issue we've been constantly bringing up is how on-time performance is tracked. And it's not really tracked from the rider's experience, it's tracked from the train's experience. So if you're taking a train, let's say you're late into Jamaica and you miss your connection, and that train then makes up time that you originally were on, that train is on time, but you're an hour late to work. So you're not on time. Is there a way we can work on changing the metrics, some other way of looking at it so that it's really from the customer's perspective?
Yes, let me address the rider-customer distinction. I actually think, I understand, run the Riders Council, I get that. I was a commuter council, but I actually believe that, I do believe that if you consider the people who are on any one of our systems as a customer, they should be treated like a customer, and they're always right. So it's a small little thing, but it's something. Yes, the metrics do need to change, and the metrics that on the railroads are clearly need to be different than the metrics on the subway. I'll address the subway in a minute. But yes, we are looking at new and different ways and metrics. And you're right, if you have to change to Jamaica, but the Jamaica train that you get on that goes into Penn is on time, you're on time. But no question, it's going to be late. We're doing everything we can to, again, enhance communication and also to be able to work with the Long Island Railroad about syncing up so that, you know, if there is any type of a problem, it can work. There are ways to deal with it, and the ways to deal with it are, what do you call them? What do we call the new wait time? The new
Customer base waiting.
yeah. There's a term of art that I'm slipping now. Okay, I need to jump for a second. I've got a call from the governor's office, so I need to jump. But let me finish answering the question. Tell him I'll be with him in a minute. Right? No. What's that? Yeah. The excess wait time and different things like that. So that we will look at it. Let me address this issue on the subways before I leave. We are coming out with new metrics on the subways. I think the subway metrics right now, and I'll give you my perfect example. When you go online and it says, I use this, I did it this morning, 4, 5, and 6, this was something like 5:30 this morning, 4, 5, and 6 train, it says delay. And then when I look at the delay and I pop it open, and it was a signal problem, and actually it was a signal problem on the 6th train way up in the Bronx, almost to the end of Bureau Avenue. And so I then went over to subway time, and I looked at when it looked, I just picked any spot. So I picked 86th Street on the Upper East Side, and so I would get the 4, 5, and 6, and I wanted to see what the headways look like. And they were 3, some were 2, and then 3 minutes apart from each other. So think of this scenario. We're telling our customers that we have delays, but if they went down to the station, the trains are coming every 3 minutes. Wow, what are we doing? Our metrics, the delay means the following, and it's an industry convention that's not based on riders or customers. It's an industry convention, meaning when a train leaves its starting time in the Bronx, will it get to its terminus in Brooklyn within 5 minutes of its schedule? That's what's determined to be a delay on the subway system. You people are all, you are smarter than most when it comes to the subways. When people tell me that the trains are, the schedule on the subways is late, they have the foggiest idea what that means, because I then challenge them to say, where have you seen this schedule?
Yes.
I'd like to see the schedule.
Riders don't know if they're getting the
Right, but they
7-11 or
talk
the
about it.
7:16. They just know how long they waited.
Right, it's
Yeah.
how long they waited.
Right.
So we're going to have metrics to talk about wait time and how long people need to wait. One of the things with the new communication-based controls coming in on the number 7 line, where we can generally get right now during rush hour on the 7 line, I wish we could do this everywhere, 26 to 27 trains per hour during rush hour, during the peak periods. So that's every 2 minutes and 20 seconds, 2 minutes and 30 seconds. We're going to get 10% increase. We're going to get to 30 trains per hour, 1 every 2 minutes. Those folks in there should know that they should be getting 30 trains per hour coming in during this peak period. Pick an hour, and we're going to be able to have metrics to show did we send through 30 trains per hour, or did we send through 27 trains per hour? Which means they were on average, instead of it being 2 minutes, it was 2 minutes and 20 seconds. Now, it sounds like I'm going to be making an excuse. Most people can't make a distinction between 2 minutes and 2 minutes and 20 seconds. But I'm sure this will come about. Everybody is experiencing that that they have on the 7 line. We are talking about 4 to 5 minute headways the rest of the way. What I think is important is for everybody to know and be able to get metrics out there. How many trains per hour are you supposed to get in that station? And are you achieving it? And how long do you have to wait? I think it's important to see, if we tell you you're supposed to get, 8 trains per hour and you're only getting 7, we're going to show you that it's coming in at whatever 7/8 is, percentage-wise, and that's what's going to be coming in. So we'll be changing it. We'll be going through this with the board, as I mentioned before, about talking to them first. We will put these online so people can actually see this information at their desktop or on a handheld device to be able to do it. It's going to be as extremely robust. It's not going to be the system in total. It's going to be the system by line, all the way down, so it'll go all the way down the line, be able to tell you how we're doing on any given day. And quite honestly, I want to use the Long Island Railroad example before I leave. The day after the summer was better than most days during the summer, and we were given a pretty good slap on the back for that. The next day, we had, the number of tweets, oh yeah, typical of Loader, blaming Amtrak for the Long Island Railroad problems. Well, Amtrak had a train that was stuck in the tunnel, it was stuck in the tunnel for 11 minutes, and then every train thereafter was delayed going through. I mean, look, it's the tunnels, please, if you could do me one great favor ever, whenever you hear someone talk about why we need a new tunnel on the Hudson River, please remind them that we also need one, at least a new one, on the East River. Long Island Railroad cannot get into the city unless that tunnel is free and clear. It's a single point of failure, something you never want to have when you build a system, but we have it here. And so I know I got to go. He's an impatient guy.
Thank you so much, Joe.
So thank you
really
very, very
terrific.
much. You guys want to come with me? You can go. What's that?
Any other business that folks would like to bring up? Oren?
Andrew, Randy and I were at a presentation a few weeks ago with New Jersey Transit. Now, New Jersey Transit's building a microgrid to back up their system. Should there be a commercial power failure, they can get people out of Penn Station and out of Hoboken home. What is the MTA doing on that? Do we have any status on what they are doing?
The last we heard about...
Ronnie said that she had dispatched this information to her engineers, and her engineers were working with NJ Transit to come up with the best solution for whatever area specifically.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that, but that's good to hear. The power is obviously a problem. The governor walked through, as you recall, in shirt sleeves, 59th Street, Columbus Circle, and was looking at all the power problems and with Con Ed executives. And you heard the chairman mention that even a fluctuation in power triggers some of the signals, which is very bad. So I know they're looking at power. I don't know exactly what yet. I hope to hear.
Well, this would be like a colossal power failure like we experienced in 2003 when everything went dead and people were just stuck in tunnels and just couldn't get out of the city.
For the longest time...
This system will provide a way of doing that.
Now, for the longest time, we had heard that we had backup power from the Power Authority. Remember that whole thing when we had a failure of Con Ed and Power Authority power came on? But I don't know how much of a blackout has to occur before that kicks in.
Right, and the traction power is mainly Power Authority power. The Con Ed is what powers the signals. So that makes it even more complex. That you have two different entities providing power.
Well, the idea with New Jersey Transit is to have a power station where they can supply traction power and signal power and get everybody out of the city.
Did they say how long they expected before that could be up and running?
Randy, do you remember how long they said that?
What's that?
The microgrid for New Jersey Transit. It is a few years down the road, but they've done quite a bit of research on it and how it should be done.
the construction of it is a few years down the road? Or
Yes.
it'll be finished a few years down the
It
road?
will be finished. They have to build, they're gonna have a gas-powered plant that will supply this alternate power, so that we get people out of Penn Station and out of Hoboken, and even one of the major operation center and a bus garage.
Yeah, I mean, the chairman referred to the Amtrak train problem he had in the East River tunnels, but of course, there's 4 of those. There's only 2 Hudson River tunnels. They have a really severe need for more tunnels. And there was some good news. Hopefully, we're going to get, the Gateway project's going to move forward. It looks like at least it's in the talking stage, which is better than it's been.
Andrew, the project that Warren was talking about was given to us and some other people who are advocates with, we had a meeting with the NJ Transit Executive Director and his staff, and they talked about, they gave us the PowerPoint, which I emailed to the board, and Ronnie emailed me, she says, I wanted to let you know that I'm connecting our engineers with NJ Transit to compare ideas. There have been various power redundancy suggestions at different parts of the service areas, and we want to pick from the best, and she thanked me for sending it there. So the MTA is working on this.
Stuart?
Andrew, Mr. Loda focused his comments on the customer experience and how he's going to talk to the board before he talks to the public. Maybe this is the time where the Freedom Ticket Plan is something, he talked about passengers finding new ways to get to work, or if they're disruptions, riders have other options. Maybe this is the time where we plant a seed in his ear and, no, that doesn't make sense. No, plant a thought in his head that this is something to get on the table quicker than has been, to get that out there, that we could leverage all of the different elements of the system, whether it's LIRR trains that are under capacity or subway trains that are not fully utilized. So maybe this is the time to make our push again with Freedom Ticket.
Yes, I've broached this.
Let's just make sure we remember that that's not a PCAC issue, that's a transit, because our council has not been on board with that. So you say as a PCAC, well, I'm getting the same situation we had last time on it, where our.
I'm not aware that there's any pending issues with any of the councils. I think the report was embraced fully by everyone.
No, it wasn't. That was the issue. That was the issue. So I'm just pointing out that before you go down the road, I just want to make sure that.
I have a different recollection that the report is in a stage where it's been advanced to the authority and that they're moving on it, but at what pace? So if you're
There was
telling me
supposed to be a pilot.
That's what I'm talking about.
Obviously, the Amtrak work in Penn Station put off the imposition of the pilot. I don't know if it's coming. We were hoping it would come in October for just Southeast stations, Southeast Queens.
But my colleague is raising a different issue.
I
Is there still
heard.
objections from the
Yeah, I mean, I
riders?
thought Ira at least thought it was a good idea, but, yeah, right, that's true. Yeah. What was that? Oh.
Andrew,
yes.
I agree with Stuart, but the one concern is you said October is when they're supposed to be hopefully they're talking about the Freedom Ticket. Am I correct? As you said before.
Now that the schedules are back to normal, it could happen in October. I don't know that it is going to happen in October.
Because to be honest with you, a lot of people during the summer thought maybe they should have done the Freedom Ticket because it would then give an option to transfer from the LIR.
It wouldn't have been a scientific experiment if you had done it.
Exactly, which I did say that to some people, and telling them it's like talking to the windows or the Statue of
But
Liberty.
actually, this discussion brings up something that I saw in your chair's report, and is something that probably is a full PCAC issue, which is the use of the Belmont Park Station. This is another. Belmont Park. This is like the Meadowlands rail facility. Fabulous amount of parking, great number of tracks, totally underutilized. It just sits there unless there's a Bruce Springsteen concert or a football game. And Belmont Park is another one of those. How has the Long Island Council taken a position on the use of the Belmont Park train station?
haven't taken a position, but we've asked questions, which is why it was in the report, that we want to get more information on it.
Oh, well, we would love to hear that, because that would obviously affect Nassau as well as Queens.
Yeah, to the degree we've gotten.
I don't think that they're looking at it as on their table, on their.
They're not looking at it as a
think-
full-time service?
I don't think that's not how they're.
Right.
looking at it.
They've-
As of now.
There have been, to the degree we've heard anything, it's that they're afraid weaving trains in at Belmont are going to affect the regular mainline service.
It's also a very slow speed moving today, like 5 miles an hour.
Yeah, I think that's the problem.
And if
You've
you're
got-
gonna
you've
have
got a-
third track
you've got a train
construction,
sitting
I
there trying to
understand
make
that
it
could be
through
an issue.
make it into the regular flow of traffic very slowly, and.
But after you have, third mainline, third track, it's very viable, I think. When is that supposed to start? Do we have an idea?
I think,
Yeah. Now that it's got the
yeah,
go-ahead, I mean.
it's, I think I think by the end of 2020 supposedly now, well,
I
that's
thought it was 2021.
2021.
That's what I saw on the website.
Okay, maybe 2020, it may be 2021.
Actually, speaking of communications, I was on the Long Island about 2 weeks ago, and the announcements at Mineola Station were amazing. I mean, if we only had announcements that informative at subway stations, or any other, right. Is it really? It's very different there? I mean, they told you about Oyster Bay, they told you about train coming through, please step away. I mean, it was just amazing.
Why don't you find out who is making those announcements and have him teach? And have him become a trainer, or, and teach everybody else.
Such and such train is running 2 minutes behind. I mean, it was just really informative announcements. Really good. Should be the way it is everywhere. Any other issues that anyone would like to bring up? Chris?
Yes.
Oh, Edith. You're still
The
there,
other
Edith.
question, I had submitted several questions.
Yeah.
Are they going to now be submitted to Joe in a written format?
They will.
Since we did not, we did not discuss them here?
Anything that he had to rush out, anything.
No, I understand that. No.
We will submit them in writing.
The questions we had that are still on the table, if there are other questions that went to Bill, are we going to send them on to him?
We can send them, yeah.
Yes, the answer is yes.
For answers.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So if
Okay.
anyone who wants to anyone who wants to. I'm sorry. Anyone who wants to have questions sent along, please send them to me today, and I will send them along. I had, in fact, had Edith's questions out when she came in and asked her a question. We were.
No,
weave
anything
it in there.
will be sent, and he will respond, because he's that kind of guy, so. Anybody else with an issue? Please, go ahead.
There's two issues that I'd like to be brought up, and I know the last time we had the PCAC meeting last month, 3 months ago, there's gotta be an echo in this mic. Anyway, there were two concerns. One with the Metro North Station at Yonkers, about that gap.
Yeah,
Because-
I raised that to
Yeah.
Chairman, to ex-President Gilletti while he
Yeah.
was still here,
Yeah.
and they said they would look at it. I can follow up with Kathy Rinaldi.
Just to let you know, someone I know, I'm not gonna use his name, or she, had a major complaint, no, seriously, because this person almost did, actually, because of her, she had to have ankle surgery because she fell. And no one assisted her. She was in a walker, and she's very upset. She's not suing because she thinks they know they have to fix it. But the thing is when is it gonna be fixed? The safety concern of a gap, it's nice to see Long Island Railroad has the sign saying, please be careful of the gap. But it'd be nice to see that on the Metro North lines, all Metro North lines. And I do not see them on the Hudson line.
Okay?
And the other concern is there possible in the near future, and I say this in the near future, can we,
Please, go on,
as I
Chris.
was saying is there a possibility that subway stations can also soon when the trains are curving into the stations, like 14th Street, I know they do have the voice thing, but sometimes the voice is so low, you gotta have to get a microphone up your ear to hear it, or something else. Is there possible, like, some stations who don't have those automatic gaps, but has at least a good 3 gap or something, can there be like a little sign on the floor saying, be careful of the gap?
On curved stations,
Yeah,
well,
like, some
certainly,
stations are straight, but then you get too close to the front,
I
there's a
thought
gap.
there was signs.
Not at 14th Street on the northbound
It used
R&W.
to be on the platform side, and when the grate opened, there was a booth. So I agree. I have to think it should be the gap sign in every car everywhere.
Or
It
station.
certainly would not be such an expense, and I'm sure it would have a positive impact on liability.
I do know that on these, I guess it's on, pretty much all the lines, when they're announcing a train, it says, the next, I'll use an example, the next the next Brooklyn Brown Express is entering the station. Please be aware of the gap as you enter or leave the train. I have heard that.
No,
And at 14th,
Andrew, no, that's a fantasy.
no, at 14th Street on the 4, 5, and 6, if you're talking about the R and the W, I don't know, but on the 4,
No, it's
5,
not
and
curved,
6,
so it's different.
there are definitely platform signs, as
I
well
thought
as
so.
announcement every time.
And there was at the Old South Ferry Station, of course, because that was really
But
all curved.
I only know about the 4, 5, and 6 at Union Square, and I can say that. And there are also, as the platform slides in and out, there is also an announcement made that says,
Beware of the moving.
beware of the moving
Yeah.
platform and beware of the gap, et cetera.
Okay,
Yes.
but the
Can-
fact,
can you use the
excuse me,
mic, Carol?
people, if there's no announcements working in the car, this announcement is not happening.
No, there aren't in the cars because those are automated announcement cars actually on that line. So the car wouldn't, we could ask them to reprogram when you're entering 14th Street, for instance, on the R142s, which is what those cars are, as it announces 14th Street.
I'm not talking about the RT trains.
No, but Edith is.
Oh, okay.
She's talking about the IRT.
No.
But the fact
But
of
you
the
did
matter
get,
is, the announcement should be both inside and outside.
We got it. Okay. Yvonne, did you want to say something?
Yeah, when the chairman was talking about.
Want to use a mic?
When the chairman was talking about cleaning the stations and getting rid of the trash, are they ever gonna tackle the drains? Every time it rains, you go down the steps and you have to cross a Great Lake. I mean, it's insane. They're just like clogged.
The drains on platforms, you mean, as
No,
opposed to in the
it's-
track bed?
No, when you come down the stairs into the station.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. We will certainly mention it. He
You
is
do a
quite
great
focused on
there.
water intrusion, so that's for sure. Marisol,
I know we had that's too low. I know we had a hearing on the increase in services for the Melrose and Tremont stations on the Metro North. Do you know when that's gonna start?
It's already in there as a pilot. They're basically just making it permanent.
Okay,
It's the same things that they're doing now.
the hearing was to make it permanent, and
okay.
I'm sure nobody protested that.
No, we were very happy.
No, I think there were
Appreciate it.
four speakers. I was one of them, and I basically just said, this is a no-brainer.
What could be an upcoming controversial issue for our council is what type of station 125th Street ends up being on Phase 2 of Second Avenue. They are talking about more than 2 tracks. If there's actually a third track, you might infer from that the train will not be going any further north than 125th Street, because it would be like a terminus station. And there's some elected officials in Upper Manhattan that would like the line to go north in Upper Manhattan. And then there's many Bronx politicians, including Vice Chair Ferrer, that expects it will go into the Bronx as was originally planned. So we have to keep an eye on what track layout they plan for 125th Street. Within a couple of months, I think it's going to come back to the board. So that's something to watch. No, well, yeah, I guess it would be Phase 5, unless you, nobody's talking about that yet. And the fact that after East Side Access opens, there'll be 4 new Metro North stations, the Bronx takes some pressure off that.
You could also have it, if it was economic development, you could have the city paying for it like they did the 7 extension. And then it doesn't have to be.
That was Mayor Bloomberg.
Ellen, Bill de Blasio ain't paying for anything.
He may not be in there forever.
But has this Phase 5 idea, Andrew, has this Phase 5 idea been formally presented to anybody, and in terms of getting federal funding or whatever? Because this is the first I hear about it.
No, Phase 5 is not even on the radar at this point.
No, but so this whole question about the third track or anything, has that come up?
It came up a couple of months ago when talk of the next step, Phase 2, was being discussed and what the layout would be up there.
And what happened when that came up?
And I raised the issue, if you put third or even a fourth track there, does that not infer that this is a terminus and you don't plan to go any further? And they said, no, you can't infer that from this.
And that was it?
That was it. And Freddie's ears pricked up, and, you know, we don't want that to be a terminal.
Andrew, I'm not sure which plan what is the latest plan that has any effect. I mean, this has been going on for decades, but is there still to be a junction? That is the 125th Street branch going to just peel off and leave with provision for the line to be extended straight up Second Avenue?
No. When it veers westward towards Park Avenue, and it serves both, I guess, Third, Lexington and Park, at that point there'll be an exit at each end. It is not on Second Avenue anymore. I don't hear anything about a junction and going north, continuing north on Second.
With no provision for future extension?
The extension would be from 125th Street, from what I'm, yes.
Andrew?
Oh, so you'd wind up with an S?
Yes.
Oh, my.
Andrew?
Yeah.
Unless
Unless someone
this
knows
is
different.
extra loud. Would you have the opportunity, or could we, ask to see the engineering drawings when it comes before to really get an understanding of whether it does preclude it or make it more expensive to go north, or what the actual situation is?
So,
Ellen, Andrew, can I just say that the whole idea was after building up to 125th Street, the next phase would be building from 63rd Street on down, and before that
yes, that's
is
Phase
done,
3.
That's Phase 3, and until that is done, and there are drawings and plans and money.
No, everyone understands that.
Yeah, okay.
Phase 4 goes down to Hanover Square. We all understand.
Exactly. So that to talk about something that is so far off in the distance and nobody has been talking about.
Ensuring that the drawings allow for it, though, is important.
They are talking about it, Trudy, that's what you're missing. They are talking about it.
Andrew, again, it came up once, and then it sort of never came up again. Am I right, Andrew? Or
It came up a couple of months ago on the proposed track layout for 125th Street Station. Where it goes north of there has not been discussed in a very long time. And I liked when Alan Capelli was on the MTA board, I always kidded with him, Phase 5 goes to Governor's Island and Phase 6 goes to Staten Island, but of course that's not the case.
are you going to bring this up, Andrew, at the next board meeting? Okay, so then it will be brought up. Okay.
Andrew, has anybody proposed to go across 125th Street to Columbia?
Some Washington Heights / Inwood politicians are suggesting that it continue north into Washington Heights. Nobody has suggested it go across to well, Columbia University is really 116th Street, it's not, yeah.
They're taking everything over north of 125th Street. too.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. It could connect to how many different lines across 125th Street, but anyone have anything else? If not, may we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you all very much. Great stuff.